So for 120 days, 120 long days every year, most of us live in fear because guys like this are in session. Representative Paul Lundeen, glad to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here. You know, you joined Samuel Clemens. He said no man's life, liberty, or property are safe when the legislature is in session, and he is correct.
All right, for those who don't know, Colorado has our state legislature, a House and a Senate, 35 here, 65 there, people, and they meet for 120 days by law. I think it's in the Constitution, is it not?
It's in the Constitution.
In the state Constitution for 120 days. This is a really long amount of time. I know Texas does it in what, 90 days?
Every other year.
Every other year. So guys like you only get together for 3 months every other year, not 5 months every single year. Other states do very similar things. They might have some other committees. And so for 120 days, reporters are down there, lobbyists are down there. We're always worried about what kind of fool thing you guys are going to do. You've come up with an idea. Tell me what you want to do.
Absolutely. 120 days of mischief. What we'd like to do is 3 main things. Shorten that 120 days down to 60 days in the odd-numbered years, 90 days in the even-numbered years. Limit the legislators from the current 5 bills apiece that they get to 2 bills apiece, and go to a biennial budget. In that 90-day session, let's tackle the budget. Let's take on the budget and deal with that every 2 years instead of every year. And one more thing. You mentioned 65 and 35. The taxpayers of Colorado send 100 people to Denver to deal with the policy of the state. And nothing says policy like finance, but really only 6 individuals, the Joint Budget Committee, deal with that budget. We need all 100 legislators dealing with that budget. So 3 main things we do: shorten it, limit the number of bills, biennial budget, and get everybody involved in that
Let's go through those, because all 3 of those are huge changes. The idea is to shorten the session. Let's talk about that first.
Sure.
Why the hell not? That seems like a no-brainer. And the reason I say that is you've been up there for 1 full session. You're now in your 2nd session. I've watched this for 30-some years, and the same thing happens. There are some interesting bills that happen throughout the year, but the real fight, everything happens in the last couple of weeks. It's kind of like a basketball game. You can watch the last 5 minutes and you see the whole game.
Absolutely.
You know, so we could have a 2-week session. I'm pretty sure we get the same amount of work done. The important things that need to be done, or the ones that we want to avoid and push off the cliff because there's not enough time, they'll still do it. You say changing it from 5 bills to 2, and so for people who don't know, every legislator is allowed to put in 5 different bills. Is that part of the Constitution, or is that just policy?
That's policy.
All right.
So you've got 500 potential bills right there between the 2 bodies,
right?
And you limit that down. But let's go back to the length of the session. You know, there's laws all around us, the law of gravity, but there's laws about human nature as well. One of those laws is Parkinson's law. Every task expands to fill the time available. If we have 120 days, we'll spend 120 days, and you're absolutely
one of the few
correct.
guys that know about Parkinson's law. I'm impressed.
He's better than Murphy, but he's one of those laws. The reality is you're absolutely correct. The important things, the big things, the things that we would talk about in that 60 days that we had, if that's all we had, or the 90 days we had, if that's all we had.
2 weeks if you had 2 weeks.
Absolutely. I'm saying to the legislators, bring your 2 best ideas instead of a bunch of stuff.
You guys could do that on your own. I mean, in other words, that's a policy thing that you guys could vote on and change like that. You don't need to bring it to the voters to change it from 5 to 2. And I've always wondered why you don't. I mean, so there's 500 bills, and by law you have to...
There's more than 500, but
right,
go
because
ahead.
there's late bills, and so sometimes there's 700, sometimes 800 bills in a session.
687 last year.
687, all right, so close to 700 that last year. But I mean, they can get huge, and by law you have to vote on each one of them, which means it has to go to a committee to be either killed or postponed or something.
It has to satisfy gavel. It has to be heard, which is the right. You send these people to represent you. You want the ideas that the constituents are bringing to the legislators to get heard.
Right. Everybody agrees there's too many bills. Why don't you guys just agree to cut down the numbers of bills? Think about this. Even if the people didn't agree to shorten the session, if you guys agreed that you each get 2 bills, you'd be done in a month. And you could just drink the rest of the time.
I think I would hope we'd find better things to do with our time, but we wouldn't.
You would drink even more during that time.
Absolutely. But I think what happens is I think these three things interlock. You need the impulse toward the shorter session to get people to realize, I get it. Let's get focused. I'll bring my best two ideas.
Right.
So they go hand in hand, in my opinion.
But that would be then part of law instead of part of just your policy.
That's right.
So I could understand that people wouldn't be wild about that. I think the big one that you're really fighting against here is the idea of taking power away from the Joint Budget Committee, which is, you said 6 people?
6 individuals, 13 staff, standing against all the impulse for government to grow.
And there's some sense to this, in that these are the guys who know the most about the budget. I mean, they're some of
absolutely. They work hard. They're knowledgeable. They do well. They know well. But the reality is, here in Colorado, we've got 3 major political parties. We've got the Republican Party, we've got the Democrat Party, and we've got the Joint Budget Committee. We need to bring all 100 legislators more deeply into that. So let's refer that budget out to the committees of reference.
I think about somebody like Kent Lambert, who, if I don't understand something in the budget, I can ask Kent, and he'll go, well, back in 1942, there was this and that, and he'll explain it. That's the kind of guy I want on a Joint Budget Committee. And basically all spending and the big bill, what we call the big bill.
The long bill.
The long bill, excuse me. The long bill is, the spending bill, which is really what we send you guys there to do, is to make spending priorities. This is where the big fight is. Getting it through 6 people and then out to you guys is a war every year. Tell me it's going to be easier if you expand that battlefield from 6 to 100?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you don't turn your back on that level of expertise. And Senator Lambert, on the Joint Budget Committee, last year's chairman, this year's vice chairman, he is a wonk's wonk. That man knows everything there is to know about the budget. So I think you keep them engaged in the process. But there are 94 other legislators sent to the Capitol by their constituents to do the business that are not participating, in my opinion, in an adequately meaningful way. They each have expertise as well in their areas of expertise. Education, judiciary, health. These people should have their hands, their fingerprints should be on that budget in a more meaningful way as well. And so we extend it out to 2 years.
Hang on, how is it not meaningful now? They have to vote on it. They can still offer amendments, can they?
Absolutely. They can, but the process gets condensed down.
Right.
And consider the Joint Budget Committee. Those 6 members is the metaphor for this. 100 becomes 6, and the process moves through based on what they've consolidated. It's very difficult. The inertia to turn the Joint Budget Committee around on something very, very difficult to do. And that's why I think we need 2 years, a biennial budget, work on it over the period of time, get more people involved so that, in fact, when you get to the end product, you've got a product that has more engagement. I think there's potential for more restraint on government in the process of that as well.
If you're going to do that, so we'll have a 2-year budgeting process, which means departments don't have to beg and cry except once every other year instead of every year for the money they have. How are you going to get people to understand this? It has to go to a vote of the people if you want to change the Constitution to squish down the session. The other stuff you don't need to go to the people for.
Absolutely, but it's all part of one big conversation. It's a governance question that inside the building, you've got to get everybody talking about these big governance issues. And the way to do that is to break that logjam with this conversation around shortening the session.
Why would somebody not want to shorten the session? They love it so much down there during there?
They do. I was surprised.
They love the committee meetings?
Okay, so I'm a rookie. I'm halfway through my first session. I'm in my 2nd year doing this. I ran this last year, and quite frankly, some of the most vehement opposition I got from my colleagues was on this bill. I'm serious about the business I do here. I take this seriously. Well, I take it seriously too, I said back to them. But the reality is, just because we take it seriously doesn't mean we need to drag it out and drag it out and drag it out. Let's take that meaningful portion of the session, last 30 days that we get into. Let's get to that sooner, and let's do it over the issues that we all agree are the big issues of the state.
That Republicans and Democrats under that gold dome are against this in somewhat equal numbers? Would that be?
No, that's not true. I think the Republican caucus is much more friendly to this idea, although it's not universally accepted as the best thing since sliced bread. Although I think it is.
I think you're running an uphill battle, but I want to wish you the best. Good luck to that.
Thank you very much.
Paul, thank you. And thank you. Check me out on KHOW Radio. Listen for more things at the Independence Institute. Go to independenceinstitute.org, and by all means, tell a friend about it. We'll see you next week.